5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to New Realities and this popular show that I've been doing with Justin Lands every other week, which is part of the Channeling Roundtable. And this week, we are really stepping beyond the channeling into sacred geometry, because I've been fascinated with it, like my associations with Gregory and Gail Hogue from the beginning. They awoke me to the fact that there was more to reality. And Justin, what was your motivation for putting this particular panel together?
Definitely, based upon a lot of the channel teachings or the information we've been getting from other entities or higher self about ideas and technologies that implement physics on a level that we're just beginning to understand. I've recognized that there are some people out there who are actually creating these things that have been talked about by entities like Bashar. And one of them is Krasimir Kolev, who's actually lives in Cyprus, originally from Bulgaria. He's been posting a lot of stuff that I've seen on Facebook that looks pretty amazing, putting the theory into practice, which is I think a lot of, I would say, I think even like in this realm, a lot of amateur, but I don't know if you call yourself amateur, but some people, anybody has access to trying this stuff out. It's really, you just have to open your mind up a bit. And I think Krasimir has opened his mind up quite a bit. And another guest is that I know from a lot of the Bashar sites is Artur Domovich. And I've seen some amazing things he's built, a friend of mine that I'm hoping they can talk a little bit about. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the show.
Great. So we're going to get into everyone in a little depth. I mean, that we could do within an hour. So why don't we'll introduce people? They could introduce themselves a little bit about their work and their history, and then we'll go around once, and then we'll dive deep into everyone's particular genius, because it is sort of a tapping in. So I'll introduce my friends Gregory and Gail Hogue, and I were just saying I met Gregory before I was with Gail, and I think it was New York. He was putting together these incredible geometric pyramids and shapes, and I had never seen anything like that. And he said, well, just sit inside one. And then I was really able to feel these forms around me. So Gregory, you want to just give a little background, and then Gail about how you got started, and then we'll go into the work.
Be happy to. So that was 1984.
Right.
And I started working with geometry in the 70s. I was building pyramids and built a pyramid that in the late 70s cost $150,000 to build, because of the size of the crystal balls and everything that was in it. And then what happened is I was sleeping in it every night, and it set off the Kundalini flow in my body, which is really a flow of energy that moves from the earth into the higher dimensional realms. And in the process, it opens up all the chakras. And it's sometimes, especially back then, no one knew what was happening to me, and it was very uncomfortable, and it was moving so strongly, and there was resistance within my body, but the bottoms of my feet had holes being burned on them, into them, just from walking on the earth, the energy passing through.
Wow.
But eventually, what happened is I opened up to those higher connections, and the energies that Gail and I both connect to are not even within this dimensional system that we all exist in, but come from a density in the sixth density. So that's where their interest in our evolution is very keen. And so they've been helping us for the last 30, almost 40 years, bring through information to help human beings raise their level of consciousness and connection.
So the metaforms helped you connect to the sixth density. Is this what you're saying, the sixth level density?
No, what I'm saying is that the Kundalini that I was going through started the process
I see.
of that connection. And then they started bringing through information in me
Oh, I
that
get it.
allowed me to expand my field.
I get it.
And there were many times where I'd start getting into things, and they and other channels I would be with that were channeling archangels or whatever would say, use the tools that you have and expand your field. You know, serve yourself first so you can serve others.
right.
Open yourself up and get into the love, get into your center, get into your consciousness, and then you'll have something of value to share with others.
Yeah.
And how did Gail get into this? Because she met you, or was she
No,
Gail
well,
talk?
it was interesting, and it's interesting that we're on a show talking about channeling, because that's very much part of how we got started. I, as an artist, had really explored my creative side. In my early 20s, I had a near-death experience. It really opened me up, and so I had an awareness of higher dimensional reality. And so I was using more and more of my higher senses. One of the people that I was following that I got very much into was Buckminster Fuller, who was working with the geodesic dome, geometry. The tetrahedron was a really important geometry for so much of his work. And when he passed away, I had never physically connected with him except for one time when I saw him speak in Washington, D.C. at a National Academy of Sciences. But I was so touched by him that when he passed, a number of months later, I just, in meditation, would just go inside and ask and say, I know your consciousness is still there. And if you're willing to teach me, I'd love to learn. And so what happened is I would sit in meditation, and then he would come in, and I was getting all of this channeling, all this information. Got to a point where it was really interesting because it was getting more technical, more detailed than what I could really handle. Because I wasn't a mathematician or a scientist, I was really more of an artist. Mm-hmm. So I said, you know what, this is more than I can deal with. And I don't want to see this go to no use. So either bring me somebody who can help me with this information and, utilize it, because I'm a practical person, or I guess we just have to stop. Well, it was only a short time later that I ran into Gregory, who was carrying around this box of these beautiful geometries with all these tetrahedrons in them. And I looked at that and I went, oh, you must know the work of Buckminster Fuller. And he said, no, I've never heard of him. And I said, well, you need to. And a few days later, I was actually doing a channeling session, working with his energies. And I invited him to that. And that's how that got connected. And we realized almost immediately that we were destined, that we were being thrown together and we had work to do. And so that's kind of what happened.
And you've been that way for 30 years, I guess.
Over 35 years,
36, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never knew that story of how it started. Thank you, because I've known you guys for a long time and I just didn't hear that. Well, we're going to come back to you. We're just going to Justin, do you want to introduce Krasimir and Artur? And then we'll come back around to everybody's work.
Yeah, Krasimir, I'm actually not, I'm just seeing the stuff that you've been publishing on the photos. I know you're building a device, a large copper, maybe you can describe it because it looks very, very interesting.
Yeah, that's the device that Bashar described it as a space-time antenna, and actually came out. Everything maybe starts with one of the sessions, which is called Bashar's Lab, which is very interesting. And he described for the first time, probably the space-time antenna, like two intersecting cones. And he explained also that this device can allow us to tap into different kind of energy that can be converted from the ether he called it electromagnetic energy, and he explained that we can convert this into electricity. And everything started from this. I allowed myself to build 4 prototypes of these cones, which was very, very challenging. And I couldn't find a way to encapsulate this, intersecting cones, because they need to be in the resonating chamber, which is that hidden form.
Can you show us some of the, can you show us some of the stuff you built? Can you pull it up? Or no?
Actually, I have some of them on my phone, but I don't know if I can share.
All right, because I want to just also look at all, because I think you're all really similar in some ways, but okay, but continue. We can get to that later. Yeah. So, yeah.
So during the process of building the cones, which Bashar described, I start to talk with other people, and one day a person tell me that there is a private session with Bashar, and if I would like to ask any question about the device. So we talk about this, and I share some questions. He started to talk with Bashar, and he asked him about this device, and Bashar explained that actually this is very, very primitive and basic form of that device, which can allow us only to understand the principle itself about the space-time fields, how they can create resonance, and how we can convert this fine energy into more solid or electromagnetic energy, from etheric into electromagnetic. And Bashar explained that eventually in the future, we have to come and understand the idea of a Merkabah, which is a Sierpinski gasket tape. A Sierpinski gasket, this is it's a kind of fractal, which is based on a triangular fractal. And the Merkabah needs to be Sierpinski gasket, a fractal shape, and it needs to be encapsulated. It needs to be within nested spherical shells. So he just mentioned this at that point, and I start to explore the idea, start to think about how I can build it. First of all, I was thinking that the spheres that are inside of the Merkabah, but later on, we talked with another one person, and he asked him also questions during a live, and Bashar explained that actually the Merkabah is inside, and this is a resonator, and he started to give a little bit more details. So during all this process of taking steps, every steps bring myself forward, and I found a person who is also resonating with Bashar's teaching, and he suggests that we can collaborate. He begin to found the project. He has the ability financially to support the project beyond my abilities. So we start to collaborate, and he helped me to purchase different tools, to purchase different materials. We begin really to scale the project, to allow ourselves to build in the bigger scale. So we booked a private session with Bashar, and it was a few months ago, and we begin to ask very specific questions about the device. And Bashar helped us to realize that, because we was thinking first that such a big device needs to be made out of aluminum because it's very heavy, and he explained that it needs to be done from copper, and he gave us a specific information like thickness, like for example the sizes, and all these things that we was asking. In the beginning of the session, he explained that it's not sure if he will give us all this information that we're going to ask. Probably he understands that there is a big chance or probability to manifest this device, and he was very generous with us, and he gave us answers to any questions we asked him. And what is interesting is that before the session, I was making some kind of calculation, like 30 minutes before the session, and I find out that if we place 48 of those devices in our planet, they will be equally spaced, and the specific numbers they start to appear. I was very curious to ask Bashar about this, and he explained that 48 of those spheres, twice bigger, that's the one that I made, there will be enough to crystallize the entire electromagnetic field of the planet and to create a standing wave, and we can thus then take electricity or electromagnetic field, electric field from the Earth itself. We can make the Earth like a huge battery. This is something like Tesla was thinking to create with this tower.
Maybe you should talk to Gregory and Gail and get them in on that. I mean, I'm sure they have their own work, but that's amazing. Well, can we come back to you about all this? And can you find some pictures while could you look for some?
Okay.
Okay. And Justin, why don't you introduce Artur?
Sure, Artur Domovich is another friend of mine. I also got in touch with him on these Facebook Bashar sites. Just like some amazing creations he makes, also with I think 3D printing of also a type of antenna that based upon Bashar's principles for drawing energy from the ether into, as you can see behind him, he has an amazing creation for, I think, similar to what Gregory was talking about for his, to help him with meditation. And you want to unmute yourself, Artur? So you're still on mute, man.
Yeah, tell us what you're creating back there.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you so much for being part of this. I'm feeling honored, and it's really my great pleasure to interact with you guys here, truly, honestly.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's about portals. It's about portals in the sense of what Bashar was explaining, that it is seeming very simple and primitive. At the same time, it is the spiral, the upward spiral, which is cyber. And this is the way energy travels from dimension to dimension, back and forth all the time. And it has to do with what Nikola Tesla was explaining when he said what is behind the numbers 3, 6, and 9, because it is a diagram that speaks about the angles through which energy travels from dimension to dimension in spiral wave form. And therefore it is a never-ending circle that is never coming back to the same spot. So therefore it is a spiral, and that travels back and forth and back and forth. And that's what happens in the center of the Merkabah. But what happens at the center of that spiral is actually what happens exactly in the magnetic field. And so therefore it is actually what happens in the inside of every one of us, that portal inside of every one of us. It is the black hole and the white hole and the singularity in the center. That is the way by which we are shifting from dimension to dimension to dimension to dimension, envisioning or creating for us the illusion of continuity.
And what did you build? How did you build a device with those principles?
Yes, in October last year, I came across what Bashar was speaking about, the space-time antenna. And so once I understood that, and I was already familiar with the Merkabah because I worked with the Merkabah in 2016, I created the wooden structure. That's why I relate very strongly to what everybody was saying here and what Gregory was saying with the awakening of the Kundalini. Every triangle, if it is made of kappa, even if it is made of wood, if it is a natural material that will resonate with the cosmos. It is a portal. And so you will align these portals how you like. And the shapes, it is a pyramid, each shape, dodecahedron, icosahedron, that is actually what the DNA is. You could say that the creator is within us and we are within the creator. So it's a dodecahedron within the icosahedron, nesting within the dodecahedron into infinity. And that is about the energy exchange with, the triangles. And because at the very root base level, when we look, scientists were talking about the smallest particles here, and they were talking about at the end quarks and such, but then they came to the conclusion, of course, and now the Royal Institute is talking about quantum fields. But what are these quantum fields then looking like? And what are these quantum fields at a very crude level? It is a tetrahedron, but then you have one tetrahedron, you need then two that interface with each other in order to get that polarity, so you get that singularity in the center. And so when I came across that, then I started to understand, it's a Merkabah, and then the Sierpinski gasket, which is a triangle with you have a triangle, and in the center you have an upside down triangle, and that is cut out, and then you have from that fractaling out triangles if cutting into each free space, and each face that is one face then of the tetrahedron, and that makes it up the Merkabah. And once I understood it, then I created a model, and then I
is that what you created behind you, a modeled Merkabah? No,
that's actually what Krasimir was talking about. That's why I relate with him so strongly. Bashar is saying that the Merkabah has to be at least between 1 and 3 feet in order for us to receive a measurable effect. It has to be encased in 3 spheres at least, preferably 4. But 3 will do the trick already, and they have to be insulated from each other. That means that the Merkabah can have a metal rod going through it. It will not destroy the fractality of it, but that rod, once it touches the first sphere, there has to be an insulation right there. And the Merkabah, there has to be a slight difference between the apex or each apex of the Merkabah and the inside of the first hull, because it has to be insulated from it. So that in that sense, then you step up the energy and you step it up and you amplify it, because it is about the golden ratio. It's about the spiral again. And as each sphere is 1.618 times greater as the previous one, you amplify then this wave. It is a wave guiding mechanism in that sense.
Can I just ask Gregory what he's getting about that? I saw you sort of dowsing there, Gregory. What were you getting about what Arthur's process was?
There's so much in all of that. I was shown those geometries, things like that within spheres, 15, 20 years ago. And the way it was shown to me is the insulation. You work with inert gases and then you ionize the fields, and you can have spinning geometries, one within the other, within those fields.
That's what it's about, the Merkabah, spinning Merkabah, the tetrahedron spinning into one and to the other into the other direction.
And inert gases present a sort of defining points within this reality, within this 3-dimension, right? Is that why you work with inert gases, Gregory?
In the electromagnetic spectrum, they're off on one side, all in a column, one above the other.
Right, the
so
periodic.
they're really, and if, they're basically in the way that the electromagnetic spectrum is shown in different models. It's often in a in a double helix model where the inert gases are at the flux points, one between the other. But something else that I was hearing when I was watching all this happen was the reason for 48 is very important, the number 48, because what you're working with, when you're working with the Merkabah is the model for a photon of light. This was discovered just a couple years ago by a couple of Polish scientists. So when you have the Merkabah as a model for a single photon, and you look at the number of degrees on the surface of a Merkabah, you have 8 tetrahedrons with one face missing, the bottom face. That means you have 540 degrees in each one of these caps, and 8 times 540 is 4,320, which is a harmonic of the radius of the sun being 432,000. And when you work with 48, 9 is the completion number of the first basic numbers, and 9 times 48 is 432. So 48 is a harmonic of light, and you're working with Merkabah, which is an actual model of a photon of light. And so it's important that the harmonics that we work with in all these cases are reflective of, that light harmonic, which is why there's something that hasn't been known before with the pyramids at Giza. If you look at the Great Pyramid at Giza, it is built to a ratio of 1 to 43,200, which is putting it in this same harmonic frequency as light. And that's why they chose to work with that particular ratio.
Wow, that's great. Krasimir, you want to jump in on anything that was said here? Does it make sense with what you're working on?
Yes, what he described actually, it's also confirmed from Bashar, because he explained about the Great Pyramid in Giza. That's the ratio between the base and the height. It's the golden ratio. It's 1.618, and also this is about how the light is, let's say, transferring, conducting. It makes sense of what he's saying about the Great Pyramid of Giza, because the ratio and the proportions, they are designed in that sense to bring etheric energy into physical manifestation. Bashar call it also the flash over effect. Also in their spacecraft engine, they have a kind of resonator with spirals of Fibonacci, and when this energy start to build up, because it's invisible, because it's very fine energy, it's etheric energy, it comes from the template reality, but when it starts to build up, it creates so-called flash over effect. And a flash over effect, it's very, for example, you can see on YouTube a demonstration about fire. When the house is on fire, it starts to be just slightly in the beginning, a little bit of fire, and then in one moment, all the house is 99%. It's just happened in the blink of an eye. As you can see, the house is just not so much progressing. In one blink of an eye, all the house is on fire. It's
like a critical point that just flashes.
Yeah,
Wait,
yes,
let me get back to Artur, and we'll come back to you too, and we'll go to Gregory. But go ahead, Artur, finish what did anything that you heard here with Gregory and Krasimir make sense in your?
Yes. The fire in the middle. That is what the golden ratio is about, the fire in the middle. That is the way each and every living system can run on you say in physics, negative energy. If it was positive, within 2-3 generations, we would lose our DNA code and would not be humans anymore. It is only by negative entropy, by pump-based conjugation, and through the pump-based conjugate mirror, which we find in physics, in the hardcore literature, in the optics department, where we see how the pump-based conjugate mirror, when a light wave hits it, in contrary to a normal mirror, the wave is not being scattered into all directions, but is being reflected right back to where it came from, through quantum potential, irrelevant from the time, the distance, location, none of that matters. It is quantum potential. That's how energy, that's how we all function. That's what is at the core of every living system, the spiral, the Merkabah.
Right. It sounds like Dan Winter stuff. Dan Winter talks about that too,
Dan Winter is very on point with many, many things there.
Well, let's go to Gregory, and maybe Gregory can give us a little presentation about, short. I know he does, days long work, but just also, was there anything that these two younger guys are putting together that adds to your knowledge, or anything you could work with that we just heard here, Gregory?
I think it's exciting that, what's being worked with there is a fractal display. And it's important that when we are working with geometry, we realized that an important part of the whole process is the way everything fractalizes. So to incorporate that into our antenna systems as well. I work with pendants, as you know, that can be worn, and I found that there are ways of working with three-dimensional geometry that can be put into a two-dimensional field, and therefore you have a two-dimensional antenna system. So we can work with all those aspects. But the way to do that is you need three different perspectives in 2D in order to capture a three-dimensional energy system. And so this is working with some of this fractal awareness. And what I mean by that is that every geometry, let me grab something here, real simple.
Right. And Justin, jump in too with some questions. I don't mean to.
Sure.
Like,
I also, Krasmir sent me some photos I'll show later of the stuff
Okay.
he's making.
Great. Great. Okay. Go ahead.
So what I was going to say is you take something like a cube that's very simple for people to, visualize. And if you look at that from a face, and I'm not so close to the camera that you basically have an orthogonal projection, which means you use an infinite light source and project through the face, you have a square. And if you go through the edge, what you have is a rectangle with a line through the middle. And it's actually, that's in a relationship where the rectangle is in relationship to the height in the square root of 2. And then if you bring the point together like that, you have a hexagon with lines going into the center. And now you're working with the square root of 3. So I found that by working with different complicated geometries, like as complicated as what's spinning here beside me, where you work with a face view and an edge view and a point or vertex view, and you have those three projected, and you have it on a non-conductive background with conductive material, you can, and then surround it with a circle. You're basically working with three perspectives of a three-dimensional geometry that's turned into a unity by the circle, and thus you can have a three-dimensional system in 2D. And when you're working with more advanced geometries, I consider the dodecahedron, icosahedron, the more advanced of the 5 platonic solids. Then you start bringing in the phi ratio like you find in the pyramid, and you bring in the root 5 element. And so in that case, when you have all those elements in 2D, you can start to work with a fractal antenna system working with all the roots, and with the circle, you've basically got pi thrown in there so that you have all the necessary elements to create everything in the universe. You only need those 3 roots and pi, and you can create everything. And so that's one way of doing it. And so watching what is happening with the 3-dimensional system, taking a triangle and then inverted and then another up, when you start doing that all the way around and you take that into the Merkabah, the star tetrahedron, then you start creating a geometry that is greatly magnified in its potential because of the fractalization of that geometry.
Hmm. Actually, Bashar has a meditation that I've used, which uses the platonic shapes, and he tells you to kind of look at it like the two-dimensional triangle, and then extend it out three-dimensionally, and then also use a circle. And that's also a way of expanding consciousness to see how our reality actually in our mind works. And obviously for the conduction of energy, it seems like if one can combine all those elements as you're explaining in a cohesive whole, you're saying that that's the most optimum way of drawing energy into our reality or manifesting in general what we desire.
That's the way they started being able to build cell phone antennas. Otherwise, if they hadn't worked that out, your cell phone would look like a Swiss Army knife with all these things poking out of it in order to get all these different signals. But by working with a fractal two-dimensional plate, you can, squares within squares, triangles within triangles, you can literally magnify the range of information that you can pick up. And something before the show is over, I want to speak to the predicament that Bashar and his lineage got into without being aware of it.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Yes, I would love to hear that too.
Well, because I've wanted to bring this up to Bashar if I ever had a chance to talk to him, but the way he describes himself as an alien being that is literally a hybridization of human DNA and their particular DNA, because they were far in advance of us in terms of their technology, and eventually they lost their emotional body, and then they figured, oh, we're into technology, we're into who needs an emotional body. And then eventually what happened is it deteriorated to the point where they no longer had viable DNA. And that's where he said they started working with taking human DNA and creating a revitalization of their own. And what concerns me is that today, human beings are taking the exact same path by focusing totally on technology. They're creating toxins in the environment. They're creating an electromagnetic field that over 100 years ago, in 1917, Rudolf Steiner said, there are so many electromagnetic frequencies pulsing through our environment that it's almost impossible to be human like it was 100 years ago. Right. And he said that over 100 years before us. So what I'm saying is this speaks directly to what Bashar's lineage went through, and human beings are with all of the electromagnetic fields in our environment. What that's doing is it's curtailing our relationship, our connection to the bigger part of who we are, the fullness of what it is to be human.
So do these forms that everyone's working on here, does that help balance that, the electromagnetic field?
May I?
It can, if it's done correctly. Let him
Okay,
speak.
please,
Yes.
go ahead, jump in.
Basically,
yes.
up to now, in our science, the technology, it's known, basically, generally speaking, 4 different forces. So we're talking about what is energy, okay? We're talking about what is field, and we're talking about what is force, and we're talking about what is frequency. Okay, these 4 ideas help us to create our technology. What is not known up to now, it's another 2 ideas. One of them is the template structure, which is Bashar is talking about, which all this sacred geometry has to do. And the 6th component is the consciousness itself. So the consciousness participating actively in order to create balance, in order to incorporate all these 6 ideas. So what Bashar is sharing, and why me particularly I'm so excited, is because all these sacred geometry and these devices, they are based on the template structure of our the reality itself. All the matter and all the energy, in order to exist, something must give definition first from the invisible world. And this is the template reality, which is basically, I will share with you, this is something that represents the template crystal, which Bashar is talking about. This is a tetrahedron, which is 2 tetrahedrons glued base to base. Okay, so Bashar explained that in our understanding of physics, there is one paradox that we cannot figure it out, and this is he explained that this is the uncertainty principle. And what means actually uncertainty principle is that if you travel with a certain speed, you cannot fix the exact location because you're constantly traveling, so you cannot localize where is the object. But if you find where is the object, okay, in the space, so the object is not moving. So you can have either the speed of the object or either the location. You cannot have them both at the same time. That's impossible. And the scientists call that this is the uncertainty principle. And this is the template crystal that he explained. It's actually give more about understanding about this principle, because we have 3 dimensions of space. We have depth, we have width, and we have height. Okay, and those 3 dimensions of space, they are represented from the base of the top tetrahedron. They are connected in the apex on the top in 1 dimension of time, which is now. The time itself has 3 dimensions as well. It has past, present, and future. Okay, it has 3 different aspects. The time it has past, present, and future. The space has also 3 different aspects. It has depth, width, and height. So those 2 tetrahedrons, they represent the time and the space that they are connected, and that's why they are glued base to base. And Bashar explained that this shape, it contains inside all the equations from mathematics, physics, chemistry, anything you can imagine in our science. It can be expressed through this template crystal. This is something that contains all the equation. This is the basic building block of the entire universe. That's how he described it. This is the template crystal. And in the center, he gave us also a linear formula about this, which I don't know if it's appropriate to mention, because it's like X plus Y plus Z plus T. T is the middle axis. When you combine with negative X, Y, Z, and T, it's equal 0. In other words, in the center, there is a 0 point of energy. And after I start researching the devices he explained, I found a book which is called Alchemical Manual. And they are talking about, it's again from extraterrestrials, it's unknown source. And they're talking about a space-time energy, space-time fields, and they explain how this relates to gravity, to electromagnetism, and so on and so forth. So if we understand really this, how the template is structured, we can create structures from sacred geometry that they create resonance. They attract small forms, like small particles like tachyon, which is a particle moving faster than the speed of light. And they help, because of the form itself, they help this particle to move, to course around, and they resonate, and thus then this fine energy, these particles, they start and they appear to be like electromagnetic energy, and we can create electromagnetic field. So
let
Yeah.
me just ask Artur, are you getting something similar? What do you think of what Gregory said about Bashar? And as far as you mentioned the 0 point in the center of everything where the black and white holes meet. And
yes, thank you
we'll
so much.
come
The
back.
singularity, the 0 point where the singularity is, that is at the center of the driving engine of each ship, for example. But also, if you see if our body is the temple, or the ship is also at the center of that. And you were asking, I want to say that it's so beautiful how you guys, I can relate to everything that you guys saying. And the devices in and of themselves, of course, are only permission slips, right? The manifestations of the template reality level, which is a crystallization manifestation of that. And we know that the crystal skull is a manifestation of the template reality level. Its shape is a skull, because this way it is relatable to us. It is us in each and every dimension. And when we are talking about harmful energies in the sense of electricity used in the wrong way and what we can do, now, of course, those are permission slips, right? They work, you create something in physicality in order to receive an effect in the physical, like the space-time antenna, like, an icosahedron with all these fractal faces, and then you can pump frequencies through it, put antennas in it, and all of that. And at the same time, it is leading up at the very end to nothing but it is like us being little children playing with building blocks until we realize what it's all about. And then we realize that we are the permission slip. And I spoke with Ryok about this, and I'm working with my Sasani counterpart on this. But the way I understand it is really the Merkabah is at its core, it is the light body activation. And it is this permission slip for us in not only to shift where we want, how we want, in the preferred timelines, into the preferred timelines that we would like to find ourselves or shifting into. And at the same time, when you are realizing that it's only about allowance, you realize that it's also about, when we talk about 5G and things like that, that these things are only as powerful as we allow them to be. We give them the power through our consciousness, because this is the physical dream. And if we allow for these things to slip into our consciousness and they become the definition of something that is a threat to us, that could in any way, shape or form harm us, then most likely it will then, right? And Ryok spoke about this light body activation meditation, which is the Merkabah, and you sit inside the Merkabah, and one tetrahedron is spinning into one direction, and the other one is spinning into the other direction. And there you have it all. It is already all within us, as we are manifesting everything around us, which is just a representation, a physical manifestation of what is going on inside of us. At the very end, we realize that the Merkabah is just like we can be the manifestation, the embodiment of the 9. You have the 8 apexes, and in the center is where all the energy is coming together, funneling together. And that is the 9, the 9th apex, right?
So,
like the 144-9, right? 7-2, like Malachi in the scripture, which means the messenger, what also means Bashar, is the 9. Right.
So,
and Bashar spoke about the 4 representative of awakening, and the 5 being the number of humanity, which together equals then the 9. So it is the apex of consciousness, in the sense of, once you are beginning to grasp that and become more aware of how you are shifting consciously, that is when you're riding the edge of consciousness.
Right. So are we all talking the same language here? I mean, I'm sort of new to maybe Justin has. I mean,
Yep.
are you 3 guys on the same page, or I mean, you have slightly different interpretation? I mean, it feels like the same area. Gregory, what?
I'm speaking about the same thing, but everyone is their own beautiful crystal, letting that light shine through themselves and reflecting it back to us in their own, perspective of things, right? Which is beautiful.
What were you saying, Justin? What were you saying?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely bringing in the numerology, the sacred geometry, and as he was talking about, also the idea of permission slips. So obviously, we are creators, and we have to understand this. We're creating what we're seeing. We're creating, these expressions, even mathematics and geometry. They're built into our essence, and they're kind of, this is a question I always had about this. Is like, obviously, is there a reality where this could be completely different mathematical principles, different geometric principles, that is not even, goes even deeper than that. What would you guys say about that? Gregory, maybe you have something to say.
Well, the principles that we're talking about, when I'm talking about the different root 2, 3, 5, and then working with pi, you're talking about universal principles. So they exist without this universe. And what everybody is sharing, I'm really in agreement with. And I think the essence is that what happened over 100 years ago, what Rudolf Steiner was talking about, was the onslaught of a field of energy that didn't really have any coherence to it. And what all of us are speaking to is the importance of working with a technology that is universally coherent, i.e. the geometries that we're working with, when it's done intentionally, that is with consent, our permission slips. That's where we're working with our intent and our consciousness. And then we're working with geometric principles that are universally found. Then we can maintain our consciousness and our field and the expansion into the fullness of what it is to be a human being in the midst of the technology that we're bringing to bear on the situation. And so we're moving into a time and a realm, I sincerely hope, where the technology we're working with is not separate from us, but literally an extension of our consciousness. And that's the nature of geometry, especially what we understand as sacred geometry, because we're all built around this phi ratio and the way we're constructed. And so when we construct our technologies with this ratio and other things that we've spoken to, then we are working with an extension of ourselves where, in order to move forward, we have to be an integral part, and it's allowing us to grow in our wholeness. It's not like the technology we have now where electricity is there in the wall and all you have to know is how to flip a switch and you get a light. We are going to be moving to a place where that light is happening because of these relationships that we're part of and integrated with. And so that's where we're going, where we can keep our field intact in the process. And if we don't, then we're going to be blown apart and disintegrate as Bashar's, predecessors were. So evidently, I haven't worked that much with Bashar, but what I hear and what I watch and his understanding and what I've just seen of sacred geometry, he understands that this is key, literally key to our evolution, both technologically and spiritually.
Yeah. Is that what you get, Krasimir?
Yes, absolutely. Because the sacred geometry itself is this template, as Gregory explained, it's an extension of the consciousness itself. So we're working with ourselves. We work literally with extension of ourselves. And no matter what form it takes, if something is designed with a golden ratio, it will activate deep within even our subconscious mind it will allow us to be more in a harmony, in alignment with ourselves. So that's why all the technology that Bashar and other extraterrestrials they have, it's connected and it's relating to the golden ratio, the phi ratio, to the sacred geometric, because the template of how all the matter, its structure is the same. They just understand this and they work in alignment with this template. So the technology and consciousness, they merge and they are in harmony. Yes, Gregory is absolutely right.
What do you have, Gregory? What is that shape, Gregory?
This is something that is called a unity grid. And it was given that name years ago by Drumvalo when he saw it, and he called me up and said, the Earth grid is shifting. Let me grab, I have an Earth grid here.
Okay, this is very interesting, isn't it, Justin? All these different people.
Yeah.
So,
okay,
yeah.
You see, this is an icosahedron and a dodecahedron interpenetrating each other.
Right.
You see on each one of these faces, you see that cross? That's the strut of an icosahedron, and the dodecahedron is going across it. The dodecahedron always dances with the icosahedron in a phi ratio relationship.
Yes.
So this part divided into the large part gives you phi. When you connect all these points, you're going to get diamond shapes. And I left the dodecahedron in to this. And so you see the, there we go. You see the diamond shape where the line across the center is the dodecahedron. Well, each one of these triangles, if you put a line through it, it's working with the phi ratio. So each one of these triangles is exactly the same dimension as the face of the pyramid at Giza. So
how
this
many
is like
triangles there are? How many triangles are there?
60. There are
60
60 triangles. So 60 triangles, each one equal to the face of the Giza pyramid. And so you not only have the phi ratio in relationship to the height and the base, but you have the phi ratio on the actual face itself. And one of and so that's what we have here in this geometry. So this geometry, when it spins, creates an incredible unification of everything in the area. And what I was told when I first started getting into working with all this geometry was that the pyramid, as it was displayed in Egypt thousands of years ago, is no longer the most important geometry to be working with for human beings. And so we've always focused on other types of geometries, and this being one of them that creates relationship to the whole, relationship to the unity.
This shape that you're holding, it's connected with something that Bashar explained, that they create with the spaceships, they create shells around our planet, about 20 different shells. And one of the shells that they create, first one, by the way, it's tetrahedron, which is created from Esasani. And there are 4 ships creating it, one of which is the ship of Bashar. And thus then they have after the tetrahedron, there are different shells, and those that you mentioned, the dodecahedron and the icosahedron, they are also one of the layers after the. I believe he mentioned that the first one is the tetrahedron, that it's from their ships, and thus then it's the cube, and then there is a octahedron, and then is the dodecahedron, and then is the icosahedron, and they grow and grow and grow. Those energetic shells that are created from different ships, from different civilizations, and they grow beyond the moon. There are 20, but because you share about this, you show it. He exactly explained that inside the icosahedron is the dodecahedron, and they're in alignment. Each shell is bigger than the previous one. Just makes sense.
I just want to jump in for a sec. Wait, oh, well, maybe, but just to clear something up, because since we're made of the phi ratio, we are constructed from that. But we're not angular like that. We're not, I mean, we have the proportions in our body, but the angles have been softened with a sort of Mandelbrot sort of natural curve. How come we're not angular? If we're made of the phi ratio, how come we are not we're not, why there's still a kind of organic form?
Yeah, Alan, if you look close at your skin,
Yes.
close at your skin.
Yes.
Do you see there's some triangulation?
Maybe I do. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is, but it's also not exactly angle. Your hands are.
From the heart. The heart is the first cell, and it always grows, like Gregory was showing, an icosahedron growing out of the dodecahedron, the dodecahedron growing out of the icosahedron, and so it is. Like the Earth in and of itself, it is also one of these geometric shapes with at least 120 faces. In spiritual, in crystalline, in the tertiary matrix, it is also one of these geometric shapes, and our spirit is also it's an orb, but it is actually one of these geometric shapes.
Well, Gregory, thank you for that. That's very intelligent. What do you say to that, Gregory? And then I'll ask.
Well, bottom line, let's bring the feminine into all of this.
Okay.
And so, I mean, it's always a balance between the masculine and the feminine. And the masculine has very hard angles, those aspects. And you can look at the numbers. I just did a workshop, or not a workshop, but a short presentation a week ago with Jean Houston. A lot of people was around the divine feminine. And when you're working with certain numbers, certain shapes, you can work with the masculine skeleton, and it's the feminine that drapes the curve over it and gives it life and maintains it. And so it's all okay. It's all good. We're all a composite of everything. And this is another important geometry that I take internally. It's because this is a C60 molecule, which is essentially a truncated icosahedron.
It's a carbon molecule. Yes, it's a carbon molecule.
Carbon, you said?
It's a carbon C60 molecule, which each point would be where you would have a carbon atom. And there are 60 points on this. So it's related to what I just showed you with the other piece, but that has 60 faces. This has 60 points, and the number of faces are 32 because it's working with a piece of an icosahedron that has also shown up a piece of a dodecahedron in all the pentagonal faces. So they always dance in the 12 dodecahedral faces and the 20 icosahedral faces. You always have 12 plus 20 be 32. And that is one of the more sacred numbers that is yet to be discovered on this planet, because it's there on the top, the face of the pyramid too. Each face of the pyramid, there are actually 8 pyramid faces because each triangular face is indented in. And when you indent that face in, the rough the top angle is roughly 64. So you're breaking it into two 32-degree angles.
Yeah.
So
The
you have
Merkabah
8
itself-
32-degree angles on the top, on the pyramid at Giza.
What did you say, Krasimir?
The
Yes.
Merkabah itself is created from 8 tetrahedrons, and 8 tetrahedrons, each one of them has 4 faces. So it's again 32. I mean, if you count the bottom, it's 32 faces. The Merkabah itself, if you create a Merkabah from 8 tetrahedrons, each tetrahedron has 4 faces. This is number 32.
It still, Krasimir, it works very well when you look at just the surface of a, I mean, that's what I was saying before. Then each one of those points, instead of being 720 degrees, because you're missing the bottom plate, you've got 540 degrees. And 540 times the 8 gives you 4,320, which is a harmonic of light. So
what I found very interesting, for example, while working with the Merkabah, is that when you join 8 tetrahedrons, if you leave the base in each tetrahedron, inside the Merkabah, the core of the Merkabah, it's perfectly octahedron. And the octahedron itself is representing the air. It's representing the air, while the tetrahedron is representing the fire. So air and fire together, they are joined in something homogeneous. So they how to say, they you know, what's happened when you put fire and air together is something like amplification. It's they perpetuate themselves. If you start to build Sierpinski gasket Merkabah out of copper rods, you will see that everything is made out of small tetrahedrons. Between each has perfectly made octahedrons. So you basically working with 2 different shapes. One is the fire and the other one is the air, combining together a perfect harmonic relationship. It's very, very interesting.
Krasimir, Gregory, guys, this is so synchronous because it is the first Merkabah that I built was an octahedron, and then I attached the tetrahedron faces to it. And like you say, the fire, you have the air, you have the fire, and I was sitting in it. And ever since I feel like I never left it. To be honest with you, sometimes when I just need to think about it, I feel like I never left it. And it is what Gregory was saying. It is when you sit inside of one of those structures, it allows for your spiritual body to grow. It allows for your spiritual body to expand. That's what they were about when they built the pyramid. Thoth and his disciples. That's what it's about. It was not about, okay, of course, it was a marker for a landing spot and this and that for many different purposes. But for the priests who went into that box, that's what allowed them to consciously and by choice leave the body and collect the information that they wanted to collect in order for them to then manifest in 3D here the technology they wanted to bring in them, which comes then from the template reality level.
Artur, go ahead, Gregory. You could, please respond.
Well, this is exactly what he was sharing about the tetrahedron, and each of these blue lines is if you had the base included, then you've got the octahedron in the center. And when you connect each one of the points, you form a cube, and that's essentially what is Metatron's cube, which is the way this universe in the physical is constructed. And today, you Google Metatron's cube and you get a 2-dimensional projection of just this one perspective, which is from the point. But that's not Metatron's cube. Metatron's cube is 3-dimensional, and it's only when you're in 3D that you can affect this reality and jump into higher realities. 2D doesn't exist in this reality. It exists in our heads. You know, and that's the thing. We put so much emphasis on 2D because we're 3D beings and we have conquered that dimension. And we communicate through books, through these flat screen TVs. Everything is 2D, but it's all happening in here inside of us. And it isn't until we get into 3D that we can start really interacting with our reality.
Yeah, no, that's great because the 3D leads to 4, 5, 6D, and then we get a sense of how multidimensional we are. So
yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask Artur, that's quite a sophisticated permission slip you have behind you. Do you want to talk about that?
Gladly, yes. Thank you so much for asking, Alan. So it is an icosahedron, and you see there is a triangle within triangle, and there is an icosahedron within an icosahedron, and then you have apexes with crystals in order to carry the frequency. And it is about intention. You amplify your intention, you get in there. You know, I offer people freely, you know, whoever trusts me with that, if they would like to be balanced or allow for themselves to use it as a permission slip really for how they want to define it. They can send me a picture, I will print it out and I will put it in here, which is a witness, right?
But people can lay on that, people lay on that table too, right?
Yes. And then it is all wired and it goes to an amplifier, and then I play frequencies through it. And those frequencies are then pumping them through that structure then.
So what's the basic form is a tetrahedral then that's been amplified?
Yeah, this basically, the basic shape of it is an icosahedron.
Oh, icosahedron.
Yeah. Right.
Great. Wow. Beautiful.
Artur, I actually put my photo in there too. Is it there?
Yes, it is in there too.
Okay. I've been noticing a little bit of a difference in the last week.
Oh, could you put my photo in there too, Artur?
Please send me your photos, please, gladly, from the heart. Oh my gosh!
Can you give your email? People watching is it okay if people watching will send their photos to you?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
What's your email?
Okay, I'm gonna
ART. You can put it in the chat, and I'll put it in the.
Otherwise, it's gonna be a tongue twister. So
no, and then I'll put it in the YouTube chat. But Krasimir, you want to show us some of the devices you've created too? Do you?
I have them.
Yes.
You have them, Justin. Then why don't you share, and then Krasimir can talk about it.
Yeah, I don't know if when the screen will switch, but I'll share my screen. Hold on, and this is what he sent me.
All right.
Can everybody see that? Yeah. Okay.
What is this that we're looking at, Krasimir?
That's the Merkabah inside in the center, which is again with the Sierpinski gasket fractal, and encapsulated with the first iteration of sphere. Thus, then there is the second iteration of sphere and the third iteration of sphere, and all of them, they are distance between each other of 1.618 ratio. So each
what does it do for people if you were dealing? What would it?
Basically, this is a resonator that Bashar described, and which must be able to create electric field out of etheric field, convert etheric energy into electric field. The point is that next month we have a session with Bashar, and we'd like to ask a little bit more details about how exactly to troubleshoot, to understand if we build it correctly, what indication we should see, because he explained that if you kickstart it with 12-volt battery, you must be able to get out a great output, which will be constant because the resonator it will resonate. We would like to share with him what materials we use, what thickness we use, and to see if we build it correct, and if not, to improve it until we have the results. Because this basically will prove that we can create electric field without moving parts, without anything like rotor and stator.
Have you created electricity with this already?
So far, we just build it, but we work on the circuit boards. We work with another one person in from Canada, who is building robots, and he helped us to create the circuit board because we don't know exactly how to wire the circuit board. And next month we have a session and we will have chance to ask Bashar more questions about this, and also to explain exactly what materials we managed to use, what thickness and the proportions, and to see if it's everything built up correctly, or we should improve something within the device. This is basically medium-sized device, and usually it's better to be twice bigger than that you see here. But
Really
So
great job, Casimir. Really great job, man. Awesome, awesome.
That's
But
nice.
what will it take for it to generate electricity?
It's just an initial start of DC voltage, about 12 volts, as Bashar described. And he explained that can be wired in a different way, parallel or in series. But we would like to, because we didn't ask so many questions, how we can troubleshoot the device, how we can understand what other components that need to be connected, such as maybe transformer or capacitors. He mentioned that we may need a transformer in order to convert the energy. And yeah, basically it needs to be kick-started, and thus then to produce electric field, because there is pressure inside of fields, different harmonics. He explained that some of them we can measure, but some of them we don't have such sensitive equipment in order to register. It will be very rich pattern, very rich harmonics. And he explained that the fields inside are moving, but the parts themselves, they are not moving. He explained that it's like a multi-dimensional capacitor or multi-dimensional transformer. And it's very important for us, because if we manage to create electric field without moving parts, this means that we don't need to burn fossil fuel in order to heat the water and to move these huge turbines that create such a big amount.
What will it take to generate that much electricity?
Just initial start. The idea is that if it's built correctly, it will need just an initial start, kick start of voltage, and thus then it will, if it's connected in the circuit.
But you haven't done this yet, have you? Have you done this?
I'm working on it, but I believe that we need an extra component. We need to wire also a transformer in order to keep the circuit closed in a loop, because you know we will upgrade the device next month, and we will see what exactly we need to put and to add. Up to now I measure it with the oscilloscope, and I measure a constant voltage that is coming out of the device between about 7 volts, which is AC. These 7 volts, they are RMS voltage. It's actually about 20 something volts from peak to peak, the voltage. And we would like to ask also what from where this source is coming, from where these voltages they are coming. Maybe it's picking up from the environment, like an antenna.
You know this, Krasimir. You know this. This is the step-down generator, the step-down transformer, right? It is coming from the astral field, from the 5th dimension. It is pulling in energy from the 5th dimension into the 4th dimension.
Well, maybe you should also talk to Gregory about how to generate some fields. I don't know. Gregory, you have any comment about generating electricity from these geometric forms?
I've been seeing stuff like this for a long time, and this is really beautifully done. Thank you. I think we need to put all of our addresses in the chat and communicate, because we're all supportive of the process and each other and what's going on. And
yes,
I'm loving this.
Yes, that was
I
the
also
idea,
wanted to
getting,
throw out there, guys, Alan, if I
yes.
may say, this Merkabah that is in the center, it may be also 3D printed out of copper, because there is now the option to 3D print it out of copper, which is of course
Oh,
costly. But I have put the file for this Merkabah out there on the internet for free for people to download, for those who can afford to 3D print this out of copper, so that they can also 3D print that Merkabah that is the way you see it
but
in
what
there.
do we do with it, Arthur? What do we do after it's printed?
Then you do what Krasimir did, put it into those hulks. You
Why
put them
not?
right in the center and you kickstart it. And then you have a transformer that will convert the electricity that is pulsating into normal electricity, so that you can have 220 volt out of the socket.
And
What
you,
if you 3D print it and then out of plastic and then plate it with gold or copper?
It will have a very
or-
small effect, but it will have an effect on your consciousness nevertheless. So it does still serve a purpose.
So it's better out of pure material.
As highly conductive the metal as possible, and copper is one of the highest conductors. Gold would be best. But of
gold.
What happens with gold is you not only have high conductivity, but gold also is
Icosahedral on the nano level.
interdimensional. I mean, it works interdimensionally. And
It's
that's
icosahedral
why,
on the nano level.
that's why
What-
the aliens were coming to get gold out of our planet.
And by the
They
way,
didn't
by
want
the
to.
way- By the
But
way,
what's-
the structure of the gold, it's also like a Merkabah. The molecules of the gold, they're connected exactly as the Merkabah. If you find in internet, if you see it as the structure of the Merkabah itself, and Bashar explained that also the gold, it's much better to be created. If you create the device from gold, not only this, there is also other devices. It will have many folds, many times more capabilities. And he explained about the gold that we don't know yet how to tap into the potential. One of the things that we will discover is that one of the best shape we can use for the gold is the sphere itself, and it will give us a lot of understanding about longevity.
Like that. Is that the sphere? Is that what you're talking about, Krasimir?
The sphere, basically this device, you can see the Merkabah inside. Like Gregory said, that the male part of the sacred geometry, it's the angle, it's a different angles. So the male part is encapsulated within the female. Let's say we as a human, we have also male part and female part. Let's say that the male part, it's our mind. We are thinking linearly. We can see things from different angles, from different perspectives. Okay, so this is a linear. You can see things from different perspectives. But our female part, it's our heart, which is spherical. You can feel. You can create an atmosphere with your heart. When you feel good, you can create atmosphere. So the device, you can see, it's like the male part, it's encapsulated in the center of the female. In other words, the mind, it's within the heart, in the center of the heart, within the female part. So when we merge the mind and the heart together, we can create balance with ourselves. When the mind starts to follow the heart, when they merge, we are in alignment. So this is what Gregory said, that we create the technology like the extension of the consciousness we are. So it's very interesting because all these things fit. The male part is within the center of the female, or the mind is within the heart, in the center of the heart.
That's what the Great Pyramid was exactly about, the fire in the middle, to move the mind back into the heart, back into the center of the being, to be balanced again. Because when you are functioning out of the mind, then you're giving the mind a job that is not meant to do, and then you are giving too much energy to the mind, but not enough energy to the heart. But the heart is that organ that receives the energy in form of excitement or anxiety from the higher self, right, through its filters. And therefore it is really that what it's about, for us to go back into our center and to go back into our heart and to think out of the heart, to realign ourselves. So it's a realigning to the fire in the middle, back into the center. Krasimir, you guys are so on
Like,
point. Gregory, thank you
Gregory.
so much.
Gregory,
You
go
know,
ahead.
Well, the thing about the heart isn't where we are coming from. It's actually a doorway. And so we're multi-dimensional beings, and the doorway is the heart. And so it's only by working with the larger part of ourselves, the multi-dimensional part of ourselves, and the doorway to come into this dimension is through the heart. And from there, then we can work with the brain as a non-local phenomena. And so that is, we're working with consciousness that exists on a universal level, coming through into our body from a soul level through the heart into working. And so then the metaphor really works, what everyone was saying, bringing that feminine love aspect into the linear, logical male aspect and blending both of those together. But we have to realize that we're more than this body. This is only about 10% of us. It's like we're an iceberg that is hidden mostly beneath the water, and we're hidden on the other dimensional levels, on the fourth, fifth, sixth, and so forth. And so that's our opportunity. By working with sacred geometry, we can bring a lot of these levels into coherence with each other and start to bring them to play in this reality. And something, when we were talking about the spheres, I mean, this is a spherical Icasa dodecahedron, and I have downstairs a spherical cube octahedron, which is made with 4 strips. And so I think that that is an aspect of working with a sphere that may be important to bring to play in what we're starting to see with some of the geometries you're building, that somehow we're going to start working with a spherical Icasa dodeca and interspaced with solid copper spheres. How did you make those, by the way? Those incredibly beautiful, large copper spheres. How did you form those?
Those I have bought from a friend. Those copper spheres I have bought from a friend, and just put them into the structure, and yeah, and then
how did he create them? I mean, I've seen them in China made like that.
He's a metal worker. And that's what he does. It's he works mainly with copper, and that's where he makes rings. All about those rings and spirals, all the time. And then he puts them into resin with crystals and creates different shapes this way, cloudbusters and such devices.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
and
I'm going to put this link up there too.
And then you're working with 3D printing the other Merkabah form. And
yes, I printed one already, and then I sold it to somebody who was really wanting to have it. And so I thought, somebody wants it, I'm not gonna be like, oh, I keep it. I gave it away, and then gonna work on a new version of it. Yeah.
Because we do a lot. The way we build our forms is working with welding, arc welding. And I even have a mini arc welder where we work through a microscope, a binocular microscope, in order to do very small welds on the edges of all the forms and these pendants that I build. But we could create some of those forms. It'd be interesting to see if 3D printing in copper, because that's an expensive proposition, could be done a little easier and quicker with welding.
Well, Krasimir, you're doing 3D printing with those forms too, right?
No. There is nothing 3D printed. It's everything soldered.
Oh,
like everybody said.
Soldered. Yeah.
Soldered, yes. But up to now, I use tin in order to solder the copper.
Tin. tin.
But yes, but from a few days ago, I start to use also welding, like arc welding, and it's really fascinating because the material such as tin, it's not included inside, so it's pure copper only, and it's very strong, and it's much more easy to resonate. It's very precise at the same time, and it's beautiful. I just explore now. I start now to weld with welding, with cold welding. It's called also. I don't know, Gregory, what type of welding it's used, but in order to solder copper, you need to use something like cold welding, because if it's very thin sheet, you can melt it very easy, because the copper is heat conductive material, and it's extremely difficult to solder. The copper is extremely difficult. You have to use specific equipment.
Mm. Wow, interesting. I just want to ask, what's that, Artur? I also want to go back to what you keep saying. The fire from within is what pyramid means. It means fire from within, pyra, medium. And so all this is intensifying the fire within us, the life force fire. Is that it?
100% on point, Ellen. So on point.
Okay, great. What was the thing you were going to show us there? What was
No, I was just thinking, because I have here this Merkabah and it's out of copper, and I agree. Like, if you do it out of copper, it even looks much better if it is soldered right there on those spots. If it's all the same metal, right? If it's all the same, you have the same conductivity throughout the whole part.
It's homogeneous. The material is homogeneous. Yes.
Solid state, right? Yeah. Cool. Really cool that you're doing that now. You're developing a whole new skill. So much cool comes from that.
What do you call the thing behind you? What do you call that device, that big thing? The
quantum balancing chamber.
Right. And do you find every time you add like a little element to it, it modifies the energy?
It is a reflection of me becoming more complex, or becoming more aware of the complexity of my being, in a sense, if that makes sense. Because it is just a reflection, the way Bashar was explaining also the ships, which are these elaborate shapes that are beyond an icosahedron or dodecahedron. They have maybe 40 or 60 faces, but they are basically that. And they are a manifestation of their own higher self, which is an orb. Because he was explaining that we might think of the spirit being in the body, but there's actually a body inside of the spirit being manifested as a physical dream within the spirit. And so when they manifest a ship, it is basically the bubble that is, and the energetic bubble that is around you, that is being manifested with, and when you are within that bubble, it is as if you will be inside of the template reality level, inside of the dream state, and everything you think of, the ship will then manifest for you, and you can physically interact with it. But it's shape.
Yeah, Justin, you have something to say about that? Because I think that hooks in with.
Sorry, no, I was just a bit distracted. My son's with me. I was actually wondering about Casimir. Casimir, where did you get the big spheres? Was that also imported from China?
Yes, we found factories in China that they make them, and it was extremely difficult to manufacture because they need to be very thin, and they are also very expensive because copper is very expensive, and it was really very hard to find them.
But just one quick question also, you actually picked up 7 megahertz, or how much energy was coming from? There's no energy being pumped into it.
Now if I just hook the oscilloscope on the device, it's showing 7 volts RMS, which is pure RMS. It's something like root mean square. For example, if you have voltage like 20 volts from peak to peak, okay, something in between. This is simply explained. This is the RMS voltage. So it's like 7, 8 up to 9 volts. I have when I hook the oscilloscope to the device without anything attached. But the idea is that if you start it, you must be able to produce much higher current consistently. So this is what we are aiming for.
Is it because it puts it in like a cycle of energetic creation
Yeah.
that if you kickstart it, that it would maintain that energy within itself and just keep
Once
on.
you kickstart it
Yeah.
with a 9-volt battery, it's going to start to amplify that, and it's going to keep that current.
Yeah, but if you
running.
turn off the battery, it will just maintain that current. You're saying, right?
It will,
So just
it will
kickstart
amplify. It will just use that 9-volt only for that effect to pulling in more, and from that point on, it's going to run.
Oh wow,
That
great.
is a free energy device, you're saying. Go ahead,
is.
Gregory, jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, everything in the universe, it's like a lot of the stuff I work with. You think of it like a siphon. Once you get the flow going, it keeps flowing. And we're talking about interdimensional flow. I mean, 95% of this reality, science says, is dark matter, or, you know, it's like they don't know where all the energy is coming from. And that's what is being tapped into here. And it is, think of it like a siphon, that once you get the flow going, it wants to flow. And you just need to, you know, suck in that tube with 20 volts, and then you get the current flowing after that.
Why don't we
Yeah.
have free energy then in everybody's house? I want a little box I can plug all my devices into. You know, is it what?
Basically, in order one idea to be manifested, it needs 5 things. The first one is to have a vision, somebody to envision this idea. The second thing is timing, which it means to have the proper time. For example, Tesla was able to create this device, but the time was not correct. He was living little bits in front of his time. Okay, I believe that now we have the timing. Now we are reaching, let's say, the pivot point, which we are able to have this energy. And the third one is to have the knowledge, to manifest the idea, to have the knowledge, to have the understanding. And the fourth one is to have the resources in order to create it, to materialize this knowledge. And the fifth one is to be committed, you know, just to believe, to be committed in order to manifest it. But I believe that next few years, many people independently in the different points of the planet, it will be able to create and discover this kind of ideas that it's dealing with the template reality, and thus then will allow us to tap into this free source energy, free energy as they call it, or as Bashar explained it, a rational energy, which is
Irrational
very,
energy.
yes, very easy once we understand the template. Actually, after it's so easy to, once we discover something, after it's very easy, there is many ways we can implement it.
Right.
But I believe next few years we're going to reach these pivot points, and it's just the right timing for us to discover this.
Right. Is that what you get, Gregory? I mean, I was going to ask you, Gregory, what Arthur said, the complexity of the shapes represents an inner development of complexity. Do you find that to be true also? But you can.
Knowledge grows, you know, always grows in a reflection within you and without you. So what I like to see with all the geometries that I work with is that when I create certain things and then bring something new into the environment, everything kind of shifts around. It's like bringing another gear into the machine.
Yeah.
And when you're working with all these elements, you're working with natural elements in every aspect, and they always fit together in such a beautiful way. And especially when your intent in the whole process is always for the good of all. And so working with bringing through energy, you can't make money with it or it will be taken from you. You have to really work in a way where it is in service to all. And there are many forces on the planet that are counter to that.
But that's changing. We're shifting the account, right?
That's what so many individuals all around the world are coming from a heart space, coming from a place of consciousness. And so as long as you keep the politicians playing their game and we play the human game and we work with our consciousness, it's going to keep popping up so much that pretty soon it's like mushrooms popping up, and underneath you have the network where the biggest living entities on the planet are fungi, because they spread unseen throughout vast networks and forests. And that's the level of human consciousness that's coming into the planet right now. And
Right.
so that's, as long as we all keep going into that and we keep that connection to spirit and in service to all being at the forefront of everything that we're doing, then the information that comes in, the way it's handled, the way the right things happen serendipitously with others,
Like this conversation.
like
Like-
this conversation, we exist at a wonderful time in creation where so much is breaking down so that more can be breaking through and rising up. You know, the
Beautiful.
pandemic has taken so many things away from us in order to give us even more. So
Wow.
we have to be there ready for it and be working, like everyone is saying, from that heart space, from that higher space, from that understanding of what is our opportunity as a human being to grow in a way where we can be spiritually relevant and expanding. And that's where we are at this time in history.
Beautiful. Thank you. But so just we'll wrap up a little bit because but to tell us what you're working on now, Gregory. Where's your energy going and what are you doing?
Oh, wow. Where I'm working now is with some forms that are spinning inside a magnetic field, and it's something called the 5G solution. And what we're finding is that in this spinning geometry, that I have a holder for it, I can put different geometries like this underneath it, and it interacts with each one in a different way and creates really powerful large fields. So I do make large forms, but I find that it's not necessary to make something really large to get inside of, that you can, with precision and with the right speeds and everything else, you can create a field that will shift the physical body. And I've been feeling so many shifts going on because of that. Something else I wanted to say just about the metal that we're working with. We work with welding because that way we're working with the same material, and we work with silicon bronze because it is 96% copper, a little bit of manganese, a little bit of silicon, and it's something called bell bronze, which is what they used to pour bells out of because it crystallizes, has a crystalline geometric structure within the metal. So it's got the conductivity of copper, but it is actually more conductive. And then we plate it with gold, finding that the silicon bronze plated with gold gives us a high conductivity. The gold gives us the interdimensional flow that's going on. And we're able to create something that's really solid and strong, because that's a problem with copper, is it is inherently a soft metal and weak unless you alloy it with other materials.
Wow, that is great. Arthur's shaking his head. Why are you agreeing with the substance, Arthur?
Oh yes, man, Gregory blew my mind, and at the same time sparking this fire inside of me, because it is really so on point. Everything. I would love to collaborate with you, Gregory, and yes, and this is the future, guys. We are manifesting this timeline that we prefer to find ourselves in by doing this, acting on this information that we are receiving from the higher realms.
Great. Well, put all your emails in the chat, and Mir, what are you working on just to keep with this development?
I'm working up to now. We built a new workshop that we can install inside a new machine that is will be useful to make other devices, and we work about another one project, about another one device, resonator again, which Bashar explained that they use in their spaceship in order to create like a capacitor. He explained that it's called a flash drive. So we're working on this device too. We have many other projects like communication devices. We're working on one specific alloy, that's a specific combination of metals that they can be joined together and create very strong and very light alloy. And we are working on many different projects. Sometimes, you know, but at this moment, right now, last few days, I'm just building the machine. We purchased one cutting machine, CNC machine, that will allow us to cut the materials. But basically, yes, we're working about another one resonator, which I will show you probably later images to see. It's very beautiful. Everything is Fibonacci based inside with spirals and with crystals inside. This time has a huge crystal inside, which is transparent without any inclusions. And yeah, we start to understand a little bit how the space and the time they related, because all these shapes that we are talking about, they are actually working like passive circuits. In other words, when the energy, for example, it's going inside the pyramid, how to explain is that our Earth, about the gravity, we believe up to now that the mass of the object itself is what caused the gravity. Okay, if it's something more heavy, you know, the gravity, this affects the gravity, but this is not actually true, because if you drop two different objects, one from metal, the other one from wood, if you drop it from the very high building, you will see that both of them, they're falling down with the same speed, right? So this means that the mass is not causing the gravity. There are gravitational waves in the planets, and they are moving from the center outwards. They're expanding, and the other ones, they are moving inwards to the center. And those waves that they are moving into the center, they penetrate each material, and they interact with the matter, with the points, with the structure, and they pull it inwards to the center of the Earth, which actually causes the gravity. And other waves, they are moving outwards, like it's like breath, it's like in and out. And the other one, it's moving outwards. So when you create structure like the pyramid in Giza, those waves that they move outwards, when they go in the pyramid, they start bouncing the walls, they create vortex. Okay, they start to circle inside the pyramid, they create vortex. And because the pyramid is more narrow on the top, on the apex, this vortex amplify, and this energy is amplifying. So those forms, they are actually built up to amplify naturally, like passive circuits, the energy. And it's very exciting once we understand how these fields that Bashar is talking about, the space and time fields, they relate. We can use the forms in order to amplify this energy, in order to work more consciously with this energy. And it will be very exciting time, I believe, next few years to discover these ideas, because so much opportunities. I would like to ask Gregory about he explained that he's spinning the geometric form. I would like to ask how fast he's spinning, like revolutions, how many revolutions per minute is spinning the forms.
I like to work in the range. Well, I have a motor that is very precisely set at 2.7 RPM. And then some of the off-the-shelf motors I buy that are hanging are around 3 to 4 RPM. I find that slower speeds in that range start to work more powerfully than spinning things very, very rapidly. It's also mechanically much easier to work with
Yes.
slower speeds.
Yes.
So
Okay.
why do you ask that, Krasimir? Are you working with spinning form?
Yes, because I'm exploring an idea from Bashar that it's related to the speed. Because our Earth is spinning about 1,670 kilometers per hour around the central axis. But Bashar explained that the crystal of the Earth crystal, it's actually spinning at different speeds, and it's spinning with 2,300 revolutions per minute.
You
And
mean
if
the
we
inner core? The inner core of the Earth is spinning faster
Yes.
than the surface. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's faster, but he explained that in the relationship with like a ratio with revolutions per minute, it's going to be 2,300 approximately. And he explained that if we remember how to use these revolutions per minute, we will discover many different ideas about how to spin things millions times per second. It will help us to review a lot of useful information. And this is the reason I'm asking Gregory about this. Also, what I found very interesting is that if you spin something with 2,300 revolutions per minute, and if you divide, let's say, the circumference, in 12 different parts, and within this circumference, if you put another circle, which is also divided in 12 different parts, then you will have in each rotation, okay, in each full cycle, each of those 12 components, let's say they are magnets, for example, they will interact 12 times with the one that they're outside. So in total, it will be 144 interactions, because 144, I think it's a root of 12. It's 12 by 12. It's 144. So if you spin this, when you multiply 144 with 2,300 revolutions per minute, you will have number which corresponds to 333,000, which is what Bashar explained, that it's the threshold between physical reality and non-physical reality. This number also is connected with the sun. The mass of the sun is 333,000 times more bigger than the mass of the Earth, which is also very fascinating. That's why I asked Gregory about the revolutions per minute, because 2,300 revolutions per minute would be something that probably we will discover in the future, and it will be very interesting to experiment.
Can I ask, you say that Bashar says the center of the Earth is a crystal. It's not molten lava then, right?
Excuse me?
You said that Bashar says the center of the Earth is a crystal, right? Is that what you said?
He said that if you spin something, anything, with 2,300 revolutions per minute, it will be in alignment with the Earth crystal.
Crystal, right?
Yes, and it will help also to discover things about anti-gravity, what we call anti-gravity. This process, it will help us to discover different ideas that are connected with anti-gravity. This is what he says.
Any more questions you want to ask the panel, Justin?
I mean, we can go on for a long time. Yeah, but it's maybe I'm thinking we could definitely do another one. What I like about this is the idea of taking spirituality seriously what sacred geometry does do. And it does show that, you know, to understand scientific, combining science with spirituality, you're going to have another level of manifestation. Possibilities open up that we have for energy, for living lives. And that's why I feel like taking people like Krasimir and Gregory and Artur a bit more seriously with they're doing things that maybe other scientists would never even think as possible. It doesn't fit into their realm of thought. They have to have, you know, in the developments within quantum, you know, there's just science is just everything is being flipped over to embracing Bashar and other.
No, yeah, that's really important. I think what you're just saying there is that these guys have merged science and spirituality, physical and non-physical. They are producing doorways that have been elusive to humanity for thousands of years, and now suddenly we have a spiritual technology and a hardcore science technology that's showing us that these boundaries between the dimensions are accessible. We can cross the borders into other realms, and yeah.
This is actually the pivot point when we begin. Also, Bashar explained that when we begin to merge the science with the occult, with the metaphysics, the visible with the invisible world, when we start to merge those two ideas, we will begin to create actually huge progress. We will begin actually to create a completely new reality when we start to merge these two ideas. Because if you pay attention actually what is going on in science, any science, anyone that is doing with science, they are actually dealing with the occult because they are exploring ideas that they don't know. They have theory, that they are looking into the invisible worlds,
Right.
that they are searching for particles that no one can never see before. So they're dealing with the occult. And if you take somebody from the occult, from the metaphysical domain, from the spiritual domain, they are dealing with the science because they have a scientific explanation about everything that they believe in. So both domains, they are interconnected anyway. But once we understand and we start to merge the science with the metaphysics, we will make a huge progress.
Wow. Someone in the chat wrote 14,544. Does that mean anything? I don't know if that does. But anyway, there's so much to discuss here. I don't know. It's just people are throwing out things, but you could look at the review. I mean, I'm getting lots of great comments on the chat here. So maybe after you guys collaborate and solve the free energy problem.
Go
ahead, Artur. Yes.
I just want to mention, I posted the link for the Merkabah for people to download in the chat so they can download the file.
Yeah. I sent that to the YouTube channel. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And also, Krasimir working on the gravity well, on the spiral. And I'm working as well right now on a portal. And
you're working on developing a portal to where's the portal going to?
The portal is going to be, I'm going to post it very soon, so I'm going to share it very soon. It's going to be accessible for everyone.
But where does it go? You step into the portal and what happens?
The portal, the portal is, we are constantly going through a portal. We are constantly shifting through the portal inside of us. So it is going to be a portal that is going to help people become aware of how we are shifting and become aware of how we can shift more consciously into the direction that we want to shift in. So it is not a permission slip in that sense. It is also a freestanding device that is just standing there.
But does the portal take you anywhere to another dimension?
I work on that portal together with Kukamats. So I have to work deeper with Kukamats on that.
Kukamats?
Kukumats. The 13, one of the 13 that Kukumats, Dov, Quetzalcoatl.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Okay. Great.
We should mention that Artur actually is starting channeling. So
Oh,
he's actually becoming a vocal channel, and it's a
well,
wonderful process, Artur, right?
Yes, thank you, Justin. You are being a big part of the process.
Oh, thank you. You're learning from each other, man.
he could
Thank
come
you
on
very
our
much.
next channeling program. And of course, Gregory's always channeling something, right, Gregory?
I know Gregory is.
Yeah.
That's it's such a beautiful thing to be part of a we, because that's where we are going, and to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
cognizant of that and to open our hearts to that. I mean, that's how we can be in service to all, because we recognize the all in everyone. And that's how we can bring through this information from other, because other stops being other and starts being us. And
Yeah.
so more and more we recognize us in each other. And it's part of the process of being demonstrated here in the physical, and it makes it easier and easier for that information. It's always there. Whatever we need, whatever's appropriate, it's there. So
Beautiful.
you'll collect all of these. I don't know how to pull them off the chat, but someone will pull these all off and send them to me at my
Pull-
email address, please.
Oh, pull these emails off the
All the
chat.
different emails and
Yeah,
connections, and
yeah, I could.
info.
Yeah, I could get them to you. Yes, yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
yeah, yes. And yeah, let's do another program, and we'll add maybe more information. Maybe bring Dan Winter into this. He's a little out there. I don't know. I'm sure you.
Oh, that would be fun. I haven't spoken to Dan in quite a while.
Dan's quite a mad scientist. No, but he's great.
Ah,
He's
yeah.
I love Dan.
I
No,
love
he's
that
great.
too.
He's got a good
Genius.
heart,
Yeah.
and that's all that's important.
No, I
Yeah.
like that. But you guys, I mean, he loses me after his first sentence, but you guys would follow what he's saying. I mean, I say, slow down, Dan. I have to take in that first sentence you said for about 20 minutes and then keep going, you know? So it's
He's in
been
the flow. He's in the flow.
yeah, no,
Okay.
this has been a lot of fun, right? Justin, thanks for
Definitely,
putting this.
I'm very appreciative to everybody that's been able to make it. I've learned a lot, and I actually, Gregory, those one can purchase those geometric forms from your website. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We have all kinds of things on our website. And that's what I put in the chat that can go up. Our website is iConnect, the number 2, and then all.com.
Right. And you make the pendants, right, Gregory? How do the pendants deflect electromagnetic waves?
The pendants that I'm wearing has 2 sides, because depending on how you wear it, it's either moving the energy down and connecting, or moving the energy up. And so it actually makes intuition so much stronger. It makes channeling much easier. And we form the outside shell. We have machines to do that. And then inside, we have about 35 different antenna systems. And then, so I've got all these antenna systems, toroidal systems. I have photon generators, oscillating crystals. I have all kinds of things going on inside. And then I activate it in a chamber on our land. We have a couple hundred acres in Colorado with vortexes all over this acreage. And I have large 20-foot forms that I build on top of these vortexes, channeling that energy into some chambers where we have forms spinning. And then I put the pendants into these chambers with spinning geometries and frequencies running through tubes that go around the geometries, and that activates them. And then we have an access point where we're located into the grid system of the planet.
Wow.
So we're working with a planetary grid system that we feed this energy in and we pulse it in. Every 3 days, we have a 24-hour pulse from these chambers that are going on and off automatically. And these are the chambers that charge the pendants, and then they in turn are connected via the grid system anywhere on the planet. And so you're working with all these geometric principles that I talked about in 3D. I've been able to flatten down and put into the pendants. So that's what we've created. And we've been doing this as a business for 35 years. And we've been successful because what we make works.
Great.
As you've seen, Alan, over all these years, we've been constantly interacting with each other because we're both dedicated to the growth of humanity, the growth of that spiritual aspect of not only human beings, but plants, animals, and Mother Gaia herself is shifting frequencies. And it's our choice to come along with it or not. And so many energies are coming into the planet right now. It's shaking everyone up. It's wanting to move energy through everyone. And if we have issues, if we have blockages, that energy is going to push up against those issues until we either fall into the issue or we find a way to overcome it. And that's what the pendants do by bringing us into connection to that higher part of our being. We're able to work with energies that are coherent and bring coherence into our field, and the dissonance that exists within a blockage, within an issue, within our negative emotional body, it's overcome so that there is coherence and flow. And it helps on a physical level as well as mental and emotional and spiritual. So
great. Krasimir, do you have a website or a way for people to get in touch with you? Did you put it in the chat? Or you want to?
Okay, I will put it in the chat.
Okay. And I'll just tell everyone also tuning in to YouTube, I recommend seeing this whole video right from the beginning because there's a development and there's a syncing up of people here, and it feels like another level of conversation, right, Justin? We just kind of went to another dimension here.
No, it's definitely an upgrade, and it's obviously the matches of interest, and it's just amazing on the same subjects. Work. I think it feels like everybody kind of, I think, got a little bit that they can help with their own little project from everybody else, which is what co-creation's about.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you. We'll do it again. Gregory, thanks for stepping in the last minute, but you were perfect, you and Gail. And Casimir, good luck on the free energy. We're waiting for you to have. I'm not going anywhere until you get that going there. And Artur, we need more and more sophisticated permission slips for sure.
I should also mention that Artur and I are we're doing some musical projects together.
Oh,
yeah, permission slip music.
Yeah, so also bring this message out in music.
What else were you going to say, Artur? You had something.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I just said permission slip music.
Oh, great! Thanks, Justin. We're gonna do another roundtable in about 2 weeks, and we'll surprise people with what that is. But it's been really great having
guys.
everyone.
Thank you so much, Ellen, Gregory, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching on YouTube. Stay tuned for more YouTube new realities and more from all of us. I'll be in touch, Greg, and talk to you everyone soon.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.